October 9, 2025. Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine, 9:14 a.m. The lights blinked once, then they died. Europe's largest nuclear power plant, already sitting in a war zone, had just lost its last external power line. Diesel generators roared to life, the only thing keeping 6 massive reactors from overheating. Within minutes, alarms reached the International Atomic Energy Agency. Another blackout, another gamble with disaster. But what triggered it this time? And could Ukraine's nuclear lifeline hold out before time or fuel ran out? A dangerous disconnect. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been on the edge for years. Ukrainian territory under Russian occupation, controlled through a fragile mix of politics and panic. Its main power lines stretch across a live battlefield, and on October 9th, one of those lines was hit again. According to the IAEA, shelling near the Dnipro substation severed the final link connecting the plant to Ukraine's national grid. In seconds, the facility went dark. Without that grid power, the plant couldn't run its cooling systems, the reactor's lifeblood. Backup diesel generators kicked in automatically, buying engineers just 10 days of safety before the fuel ran out. It was a temporary patch on a massive risk. Inside, technicians scrambled between control panels lit by emergency bulbs. Cooling pumps were restarted manually. Every generator was tested twice. Even a single malfunction could lead to overheating, and another Chernobyl was not an option. IAEA on high alert. By mid-morning, IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi called it a dangerously fragile situation. Within hours, the agency had activated its crisis protocol, maintaining real-time contact with both Ukrainian and Russian operators at the site. IAEA observers stationed inside the plant refused to evacuate despite nearby shelling. "If we leave," one said, "the world goes blind." Repair teams attempted to reroute electricity from an alternate line, but the area was too unstable. Ongoing explosions and rough weather made every step hazardous. Each delay shortened the countdown. Global alarm. As word spread, the international response was immediate. European officials demanded restoration of full power at all costs. Social media flooded with warnings under the tag #Zaporizhzhia Blackout. The IAEA's Vienna Command Center went into 24-hour monitoring mode, analyzing radiation readings from satellite data. For now, levels were normal, but Grossi warned that every power loss is one roll of the dice too many. The world had been here before, 6 times to be exact, and each time Ukraine managed to avert catastrophe. But this outage was different. The damage ran deeper, the hidden threat. While engineers raced to reconnect the grid, they discovered something unexpected. Fragments of shrapnel buried near one of the plant's backup transformers. The impact hadn't just cut the line. It had damaged parts of the cooling infrastructure itself. Suddenly, the blackout wasn't just a power issue, it was structural. The race to restore power had turned into a race to prevent collapse. But as day turned to night, one question loomed over everyone watching. How many more times could Zaporizhzhia survive this close to the edge? 11:30 a.m., Vienna to Zaporizhzhia. As news of the blackout spread, the IAEA's Vienna Crisis Center went into full emergency mode. Satellite feeds, radiation monitors, and communication channels buzzed non-stop. Director General Rafael Grossi called the situation extremely serious, but not yet irreversible. Within hours, a small convoy of armored vehicles carrying Ukrainian engineers and IAEA inspectors began the dangerous drive towards Zaporizhzhia. The mission was clear: restore power before the diesel generators ran dry. The biggest challenge? Every route to the plant was under threat: shellfire, landmines, and sudden drone strikes. Even nature seemed to turn against them. Heavy winds kicked up dust, and temperatures dropped as the afternoon faded into a cold, gray evening. A plant on life support back at the plant, the hum of diesel engines echoed through the complex. It was both a comfort and a warning. Each generator was burning precious fuel, gallons every minute. Engineers were forced to prioritize, Only the most essential cooling systems stayed online. Hallways that once glowed with industrial lighting were now lit by handheld lamps. Sensors detected minor fluctuations in reactor temperature. Not dangerous yet, but enough to keep every technician awake. "If even one generator fails," said a Ukrainian engineer, "we have hours, not days." By late afternoon, the IAEA convoy reached the outer perimeter. Drones circled overhead. The inspectors entered the site, bringing additional satellite equipment and diagnostic tools. Their first finding: the main power line wasn't just severed. It had been melted, consistent with an explosion rather than simple mechanical failure. Ukraine immediately accused Russia of deliberate sabotage. Moscow denied it. But the IAEA's preliminary photos told a grim story: twisted metal, scattered shrapnel, and scorch marks, leading directly toward the line's base. Midnight repairs under fire. As night fell, the repair team began its most dangerous phase, manually reconnecting the backup transmission line from the Dnipro substation. Each cable segment weighed hundreds of pounds and had to be fitted by hand. Then, just after 1 a.m., the shelling started again. Not near the plant, but close enough to shake the walls. The team took cover inside a maintenance tunnel, waiting for the blasts to fade. When they emerged, one of the transformers was smoking from nearby debris. They couldn't stop. Every minute mattered. IAEA inspectors worked alongside Ukrainian technicians, switching between flashlights and thermal cameras. Sparks flew as the final cable was secured. At 2:27 a.m., the control room lights flickered back on. Power readings stabilized. The cooling system roared to life, water surging through the reactors once again. For a moment, everyone just stood still, exhausted, covered in dust and grease, listening to the steady hum of electricity returning to the plant. The narrow escape. By dawn, the IAEA confirmed it. Power had been restored. The reactors were safe, for now. Grossi issued a statement within the hour. This was the closest call since the start of the war. The resilience of Ukrainian engineers prevented what could have been a radiological disaster. But even as relief spread across Europe, one truth hung heavy over the success. This was the 7th time Zaporizhzhia had lost external power since the invasion. And each time, the margin for survival grew thinner. 6 a.m., the morning after. As the sun rose over Zaporizhzhia, the air was thick with smoke and relief. The lights were back on, but the fear lingered. Ukraine had narrowly escaped what experts were calling the most dangerous nuclear incident since Fukushima. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi appeared on live television from Vienna, visibly exhausted but calm. His words were deliberate. The world came dangerously close to a nuclear accident last night. The situation remains fragile, and this must not happen again across Europe. Those words hit like a cold wave. Within hours, emergency meetings were called in Brussels, Berlin, and Washington. Energy ministers scrambled to assess how dependent the continent still was on nuclear stability in wartime zones. The consensus was chilling. Europe had dodged a bullet. Blame game begins. In Kiev, officials accused Russia of intentionally targeting the power line to provoke nuclear fear and chaos. Ukraine's energy ministry released satellite photos showing the melted transmission tower and impact craters nearby. President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a statement that went viral overnight. Cutting power to a nuclear plant isn't warfare. It's terrorism. The world must treat it as such. Moscow pushed back hard. Russian state media blamed Ukrainian shelling, claiming Kiev was fabricating drama to attract Western aid. But the IAEA's field report quietly contradicted that version. The evidence pointed to deliberate targeting of infrastructure, though the agency stopped short of assigning blame publicly. Behind closed doors, however, diplomats in Geneva discussed harsher sanctions if proof of Russian sabotage emerged. One European Union official leaked that patience with Moscow's recklessness is running out. Global reactions, fear and focus. Around the world, governments began re-evaluating the safety of nuclear facilities near conflict zones. Japan called for an emergency UN Security Council session. The US urged both sides to establish a nuclear no-strike zone. Experts from the World Nuclear Association and IAEA began drafting proposals for wartime nuclear protection protocols, something that, astonishingly, had never existed before. Public opinion also shifted sharply. Hashtags like #ProtectZaporizhzhia and #NoMoreNuclearWarZones trended globally. Protesters gathered outside Russian embassies in London, Warsaw, and Paris, demanding accountability. It wasn't just about Ukraine anymore. It was about the terrifying vulnerability of civilian energy systems caught between superpowers. A warning to the world. Back in Zaporizhzhia, the repaired cables hummed steadily again, but the engineers working there knew the danger hadn't passed. It had just been delayed. Every time the generators start, one Ukrainian technician said, "I wonder if it'll be the last time they stop." The IAEA reinforced its presence on site, deploying additional radiation monitors and installing a redundant power relay system. For now, the readings were stable. The plant was safe, but everyone knew that safe was temporary in a war that ignored rules. Grossi closed his press briefing that evening with a haunting truth. This incident shows how thin the line is between control and catastrophe. Next time, we might not be so lucky the lights are back on, but at what cost? Zaporizhzhia's near disaster wasn't just a warning to Ukraine. It was a warning to humanity. The world saw how fragile our systems really are when war plays with fire. But if a single power line can bring the planet to the edge, what happens the next time it snaps? If you found this story important, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, should the world finally ban wars near nuclear plants before it's too late?